To recap, indigenous foods when colonists arrived included the three sisters of corn, beans, and squash, plus tomatoes, peppers, and pumpkins. Berries included cranberry, blueberry, and raspberry. Nuts included hickory, walnut, and pecan. Maple syrup was processed in New England. The further south, the more crops could be planted. Mid-Atlantic tribes planted corn and beans from April through June using a hoe made of a combination of wood, antler, or bone to make mounds, then squash, pumpkins, and other crops between hills of corn and beans. Turkeys, ducks, and geese were eaten and likely domesticated. They used cornmeal, then added beans and other ingredients in many ways for porridge, dumplings, breads, and so on. Also chestnut bread or pancakes. Iroquois made cornmeal, adding berries, mushrooms, or maple syrup. Beans could be slow cooked with maple syrup and fire pits. A type of tea was made from the mint family like horse mint. Early colonists, including the French, became fur traders with various indigenous groups ready to trade for blankets, guns, knives, and tools. Like tobacco and sugar, there was an insatiable appetite for animal furs in Europe. The Hudson Bay Company was incorporated by an English royal charter in 1670 as a fur trade monopoly. English colonies started at Jamestown. The colony proved successful, although the majority died of starvation or disease. They discovered that much of the food they traveled with, like hardtack, was unhealthy. Later travelers took lemons to avoid scurvy. It took a while before they used the well-adapted indigenous foods, plus useful hunting and fishing practices. The important farm product was tobacco, not edible, but finally a useful cash product Europeans couldn't get enough of. This was a joint stock company after all. The purpose was to make big bucks for the investors. South of the Chesapeake Bay were large agricultural plantations which took over small land holdings, with tobacco the major staple. Tobacco was mainly shipped to England through London agents. Plantations also grew rice, indigo, cotton, wheat, oats, barley, and corn in abundance. In addition were orchards and livestock. During the 17th century, indentured servants outnumbered slaves, but the ratio of slaves continued to increase. The economic and trading center of South Carolina was Charleston. Without the ecology for large plantations, New England was seemingly the least likely to be economically successful. They were resourceful, believed in education, and demonstrated economic success on multiple fronts. Religious intolerance and superstition did not seem much of a hindrance for making a buck. Most people were farmers on small plots, growing a combination of Old World and New World crops, and animals from the homeland. As the fur trade declined, increased focus was on fishing, mainly for cod and mackerel. These were usually dried and salted for export. Logging became a major winter occupation. The combination of fishing, trading, and logging resulted in shipbuilding in most cities on the coast. The middle colonies produced cereals, livestock, fruit, and vegetables for export, along with lumber and furs. New Yorkers added rum from West Indian molasses, plus shipbuilding and pig iron. New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware focused on agriculture. Merchants from Philadelphia shipped mainly to the Caribbean. In return, the merchants received sugar, molasses, rum, indigo, and mahogany. Over time, colonies became legally similar, mostly moving from proprietary contracts to royal charters with similar governance requirements, an appointed governor and officials with a local legislature usually elected. Colonies moved towards common law and thought laws, regulations, and taxes should be determined locally. The colonies also settled into what became the original states, but with considerable border contention and trade conflicts. After an open hearth, perhaps an 8-foot fireplace was built for warmth, light, and cooking, initially using lug poles, eventually replaced by iron cranes, then kettles were added. Gruel or porridge was typically eaten at dawn. It all depended on availability and relative wealth. Pottage could be stews of beans, peas, other vegetables, plus fish, meat, and assorted leftovers. Bread was baked in covered cast iron pots. Food was mainly seasonal, based on hunting, gathering, growing, and available shipments. A 1763 newspaper advertisement from Rhode Island indicated the availability of braziers, copper and brassware, including tea kettles, coffee pots, saucepans, frying pans, ladles, and more. Prosperous towns meant an increasing availability of bakers, brewers, butchers, and specialized merchants. The Columbian Exchange was working with food resources worldwide added to sophisticated cooking equipment. Cooks were even instructed how to recover venison when it stinks. Given the improved hearths and utensils, cooking could include boiling, steaming, broiling, and baking. Chores began before dawn, so a large breakfast came early, which could include tea or coffee, meat, eggs, bread, and porridge. The midday meal was the main one, with multiple courses: soup, cuts of meat, fish, vegetables based on the season, then pastries, pies, or pudding. Corn could be important, including hasty pudding and johnny cakes. The meals would vary by location, season, and relative wealth. The evening meal would be a smaller and less complete version of the midday meal. With abundant apple trees, cider became a primary beverage. The range of drinks increased with income, with tea, coffee, and chocolate the non-alcoholic choices. Rum from the West Indies appeared around 1700 and became an alcoholic favorite. Artillery punch added tea, lemon, and lime juice. Brandy was distilled from local apples and peaches. Other drinks noted at the time for the more successful included Irish whiskey and champagne. According to Colonial Williamsburg, alcohol was considered a medicinal and a great way to start the day. They noted beverages called Rattle Skull, Stonewall, Bogus, Bombo, Mimbo, Whistlebelly, Sling, Toddy, and Flip. Ben Franklin collected a couple of hundred words to identify drunkenness, including addled, biggie, boozy, buzzy, and halfway to Concord. Remember, at this time, water could make you sick. Now that the colonists were buzzy and angry, we'll consider the discontent leading to rebellion next time on Food History and Mystery.